So, hey, thanks for joining us today. This is Rob Aubrey, your host of Productive Agent Podcast. And we have a special guest today. His name is Jaden Connor. Jaden works for Wholesale Utah Homes, and they're a wholesaler. And they do about 125 to about 150 transactions a year. So they're quite the organization. They've got the systems down. So here you are, Jaden Connor. Sorry about that, Jaden Connor. Jaden, thanks for coming today, man. It's my pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Right. So you work at Wholesale Utah Homes, and what is your title there?
Yeah, so I'm a relationship manager. So I do a little bit of everything, but mostly acquisitions and dispositions. So
Okay.
mostly just working with other agents and investors, helping acquire properties, and then also helping our properties sell to our investors.
Right. And so you are a licensed agent. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day, I saw in a Facebook group, I forget where it was, and they were saying something about as an investor, I heard that it's not always good to have a license as an investor. And I commented, I said, the only time you would not want a license is when you don't feel like following the rules.
Yeah,
If you're following the rules, then a license should not get in your way.
right. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's so I thought that was like, yeah, because that's what they'll teach you, get rid of your license and we could play in the gray area,
Right.
And pretty soon the gray area is way so far on the other side that you don't even recognize legal
Yeah.
anymore. So, well, and I'm glad we're on the same mind frame there, So I guess a question I have is, so I'm an agent, how do I do, what do I do? How do I work with you? Let's say, I get a hold of you or you get a hold of me, then what?
Yeah.
Because there's like, if I had a wholesale deal, I could bring it to you. If I had a buyer that we couldn't find anything, I could come to you. You might have something for us, right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. Those are the two main ways that we can definitely work together. So number one is just more inventory, right? Like we know we're in a low inventory market,
Right.
and typically these wholesale properties, they're off market and we're typically getting them at a pretty good price. And so if you have any buyers that are looking for, well, two sides. So number one, if you have any investor buyers, obviously
Right.
like we're right up your alley. Like if you have anyone looking for a flip or a rental, we're doing on average about 3 to 5 of these per week anywhere along the Wasatch Front here in Utah.
Okay.
And there's a really good chance that I could help connect you with a property that would work for one of your investors. And then obviously you can get paid as an agent for bringing that buyer.
Okay.
But they also don't have to be investors. Like
Right.
sometimes we are coming across properties that are perfectly retail ready and in good shape.
Right.
And we've worked with a number of buyers that own or occupy these properties. Sometimes
Sure.
they don't even need a lot of work. Sometimes the seller would just prefer to wholesale it rather than listing it on the MLS. So yeah, that, obviously that, bringing buyers, would love to hop on a call with you and work with you that way. And then you mentioned the other one, if you ever have a seller that is more motivated and they don't really care to list it on the MLS,
Right.
and, we'd be happy to come in, pay cash, buy it as is, cover both sides of closing costs. We don't require seller's disclosures. Like there's a lot of convenience that
Right.
comes with working through a wholesaler, and we can get you paid that way too. So yeah, there's a number of ways that we can work together with other agents.
Great. So tell us about, we'll go down two trails, I guess. So one, let's say I have an investor, that wants to buy, say, a rental property. So I call you up, I say, Jaden, I got somebody, we're looking to spend, I don't know, $350,000, right? Now what?
Yeah. So with these off-market wholesale deals, our turnaround time is much quicker. So it's a much different process than buying through or buying off of the MLS. But yeah, you call me, you tell me what you're looking for. I can send you properties of what we've got available. And typically we'll include like pictures, a 3D Matterport scan, so you can kind of get a good idea of condition.
Right.
So let's say we send a property out to our investors on a Monday. And then typically we're accepting an offer by that Thursday. So typically there's a 3 to 4 day turnaround time.
Okay.
And during those 3 to 4 days, we'll always have 2 separate walkthroughs where you can bring your investor through and do an inspection, make sure you're okay with the condition of the property, get an idea of how much you're going to have to put into it.
Right.
And we do require that all of your due diligence is complete during that walkthrough, because we're selling these properties as is. As soon as we accept an offer, we require $5,000 of non-refundable earnest money from the end buyer. And then we'll either assign most of the time we'll just do an assignment contract where we assign our contract to the end buyer and they inherit everything that's in the REPC. We just use the Utah standard real estate purchase contract. Sometimes we own them, and so we'll just do a standard REPC and just resell it to you rather than assigning it to you. But yeah, bring your buyer through, complete all your due diligence, and then we just accept the highest and best offer.
Got it. So you said you assign, it's a Utah REPC that you're assigning?
Yep. So in the Utah REPC in paragraph 19,
right? 19
no
says you can't.
Right. Yep. No assignment. And so in our addendum,
so you just have an addendum that says you can.
Yep, that we can, and obviously we disclose we're licensed agents. Like you said, we play by the rules. We have all disclosures in place, and the division is fully aware and okay with assignment contracts as long as those disclosures are in place.
Right. Yeah, as long as you disclose in your licensee.
Yep.
And the seller is well aware.
Right. Right.
So perfect. So what kind of time frame would they have? So let's say you send out a property today, and then my guy, we get up there Tuesday, we do a walkthrough, we do our inspection, and then we're going to put an offer in. Let's say we win the bid, then what?
Yeah, so
we have the 5,000 in earnest money.
Yep. Then we require 5,000 non-refundable earnest money with typically the same day, sometimes within 24 hours.
Sure.
And then after that, it depends on the property, but on average, they have about 7 to 14 days after that to close. Okay. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
So it could be done with a loan if you have the loan in place.
Yeah, and so the majority of our buyers are using hard money loans, and so it has to be cash. Or it doesn't have to be. I'll get into that here in a second.
At the close in the 7 to 14 days.
Right.
Unless you negotiate something different.
Yeah, we do give preference to cash offers or private money. There is a scenario, or there is a world where we could accept a conventional offer. So I tell agents all the time, like, we love working with agents because they're so connected to buyers. Right. And I tell them all the time, like, look, if you have a buyer that's willing to pay
a couple extra points,
roughly $7,000 more than our next highest cash offer, at that point, we will close on the property ourselves and then resell it to them and to buy them an additional 30 days for financing.
I see.
We would still require $5,000 to $10,000 of non-refundable earnest money, and we would still make them buy it as is. But as long as they're willing to do that, we'd be more than happy to close on it so that way they could go straight into conventional finance.
And they're still getting a better deal. They're still getting a good deal, even a buy and hold deal. But if you're an owner occupant, that's a screaming deal.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why every single real estate agent in the state they need to be connected with wholesalers. They need to understand the off-market world, because you can have a level up and provide tons of value to your clients simply by just educating yourself on the off-market world.
Just have an inventory nobody else has.
Yeah.
Because you're wholesaling them. So even if my buyer paid $7,000 more than your next cash buyer, that's still not even a retail price.
Right.
That's somewhere between the two.
Right.
But leaning closer to wholesale.
Yep, absolutely. And then as far as agents getting paid on these transactions, we don't have any built-in buyers asking commissions, but we just ask that agents add their commission on top of the purchase price.
Sure.
So if we send a property out for $230,000 and they have a client that wants to submit, Yeah,
We don't
they
talk
they have a
specific
client that wants to
commission.
submit full price. They want to make 10,000. They submit the offer at 240, and then 10,000 gets paid to them at
Right.
settlement.
Okay. So then so, because the MLS is the commission protection there. Do they use the commission addendum, or do you have some kind of a document that you send the agent that says, yeah, but we will pay this much commission?
Yeah, so we just have our own documents. So in the assignment contract that we send to their buyer, we specify in there, who the agent is and how much commission they're being paid.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So, well, that sounds, I'm like, well, I'm going to promote this heavily, agents, because I want the loan,
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Exactly.
so, that's, and then, so if you're doing like 125, so that's 10 a month. So, so you're coming across 2, 3 properties a week.
Right. Yep.
How many of them would you say are like, 20% down? Well, they don't even have to be 20% down. As long as they're a well-qualified buyer that's willing to pay a little extra price, then, you guys will just buy it and close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as long as they're willing to put depending on the deal, 5 to 10,000 of non-refundable earnest money, they have to feel comfortable buying it as is. Then
Right.
yeah, we'll close on it and just resell it to them. And then they could, if they want to own or occupy it, they could do 5% down on a conventional
Right.
loan.
Well, I work with a lot of veterans, so,
Yeah.
and there's a myth that the VA appraisers are really strict. And so they're really not. It has to be safe, sound, and sanitary, So, that gives you a lot of latitude. There's 2 things. And then, so there's even a thing, so they call it MPR, minimum property requirement. So, and then there's kind of a list. There's 2. And so even if the VA appraiser says, well, there's a trip hazard, the carpet's worn out, there's a piece of sidewalk that moved. Well, the veteran can just send in a request of waiver and say, I understand there's a trip hazard and I'm okay with it. And VA will sign off.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. So VA is very, very flexible. I attended the VA conference back in, when was that? So it was in May, the beginning of May. It's almost 2 months ago. And it was the chief appraiser, right? So this guy, he's a retired gunny sergeant, Marine, right? 20-year Marine. He's in charge of the appraisals, right? So he owns an appraisal company. So now he's like the chief appraiser for VA. That's it. He's the highest ranking appraiser in the system. And so there was an appraiser in a Q&A session where the appraisers, they send out the microphones. And she was saying that, well, what about like a trip hazard? And he glared, and he just like glared at her and said, are you telling me you would deny a veteran their hard-earned federal benefit over a trip hazard? It's like he read her right. The whole room got the message. There's like 600 people in the room.
That's awesome. He has a great point, though. It's a great point.
Yeah, we're talking about people that put on a uniform, picked up a rifle, and got shot at. They're not worried about a trip hazard.
Exactly.
Now, there's 2 things they can't waive, and that is exposed wood for houses built 78 or before 78, so a lead-based possibility. And the other one's a handrail. But if you're letting a handrail get in the way of a deal, I'll run over there and put one up. All you need is 3 little pieces of wood tacked into the wall, string a 2x4 to those 3 pieces of wood and call it good,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. I would say if I had to put a percentage to it, I'd say 20 to 25% of our properties would probably qualify, if not more,
Right.
would probably qualify for that.
Right.
But yeah, the good chunk of them, 75% plus of what we're doing is definitely, they need fixing up and they're hammered, and that's why we're getting a good deal on them. But yeah, there's definitely a handful of deals. At least a few every month that we're doing that would qualify for that.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to make sure, I'll have to make sure my, at least, I'll market it anyway. So that's interesting. And so, yeah, if we're willing to pay enough, and again, paying over, even a buyer paying the 7 or 10 grand above plus a commission for an agent, it's still a good deal, right? I mean, you're still way better than what they can find on market.
Yeah. So actually, the house that I'm living in right now, I bought through our company. It was an off-market deal. And yeah, I mean, I just had Jason, my boss, he closed on it, bought it for me, and then I bought it from him through conventional financing. And so yeah, I mean, I put my money where my mouth is. Like
Right.
even for personal residences, like you truly can't find better deals.
Right, because if they're selling at 80 cents on a dollar, and you, as a buyer, you got it for 90 cents on a dollar. Hello?
Yep.
It's better than 102 cents on a dollar.
Exactly. There's 10% of free equity right there.
Right. Yeah, so if you have 10% down, I mean, you could turn around and refi in 6, 7 months and get rid of your MI.
Right.
But see, the VA doesn't have any MI.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So
That's
VA is a
huge
beautiful
perk.
loan. Yeah, so I believe they get their earnest money back too. I don't know about 10 grand. I mean, excuse me a second.
No problem.
I was going to sneeze and it went away. It'll sneak back up on me.
Yeah, don't you hate that when it gets away from you?
Yeah. Then it comes right back. Boom. So, well, that's very, very interesting. So, okay.
Yeah, and then I guess the other thing we were talking about too is just the other way we can work with agents is
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys ever have a property that might not be the best wholesale. So statistically speaking, 6 to 10% of sellers are better served through an off-market cash purchase. I think as real estate professionals, we sometimes make the wrong assumption that every seller is looking to maximize price. That is true to a certain extent, but statistically speaking, there's these 6 to 10% of sellers who they don't want to go through the hassle of listing it on the MLS or getting it list ready. Like they would rather just have a cash offer and be done with it. I can tell you story after story after story where, in fact, I just met with a guy today in Washington Terrace that he's like, no, I'm not listing on the MLS. And we tried to, we're like, hey, like you should consider listing this on the MLS. You'll be able to make more money. And he's like, no, I don't want to deal with that. I'm just done. Give me a cash offer and I want to be done with it. So there's people out there that are motivated. And if you ever run across someone like that, I just need address and pictures and I can let you know exactly what we think we can wholesale it for. And then we can work together to make sure the agent gets paid on the deal.
Perfect. Perfect. That sounds like a plan. So if you're looking for inventory, call you. If you have something that, because, well, you're and they are looking for price, but let me put the caveat on there. I always say there's price or terms. Pick one. If you want your price, well, then I'm going to get my terms. But
That's the perfect way to
if you're willing to give me my price, then I'll give you your terms.
Yeah.
So you get to pick one.
Yeah.
And the answer wasn't yes. You don't get price and terms.
Right.
You don't get to choose both.
Yeah, unless it's 2020 or 2021.
Yeah, and then you got 2021, right? You had 10 offers. You got both. So very, very interesting. So if I'm a seller, let's say I'm a seller, and I'm thinking about it, what should I look for in a wholesaler? I mean, what kind of questions should I be asking a wholesaler?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would ask them, well, first of all, if you're getting an offer from any investor, there's a good chance that they might be wholesalers and they might be assigning their contract, but sellers don't know that. Right. And so if you're getting any offer from any investor, you probably want to find out if it's an assignable contract or not. Right. And if it is an assignable contract, you have to understand that their plan is to, send it out to some investors, and there's always a chance that they might cancel. I think where a lot of wholesalers go wrong is where they get these properties tied up or under contract at a price that doesn't make sense.
That's not realistic, right?
It's not
Then
realistic.
they can't sell it.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to sell it. And so then they send it out to these investors. If they get lucky and have anyone come through, then they do that. But if not, like they just they have to cancel the contract, and that wastes the buyer's time. That definitely wastes the seller's time. It can put them in some really crappy situations.
Right. And the whole reason the seller went with a deal like that was to just have a no hassle deal.
Yeah, exactly. And so number one, look to see if the contract's assignable. And if it is assignable, that doesn't mean it's bad. That's what we do. Like that's the world I live in. But you just want to make sure you want to make sure they know what they're doing. You want to make sure that they're reputable and have, a good list of real investors that are actually going to come walk through the property. And sometimes like we're never willing to do non-refundable earnest money unless we're getting a really good deal on the property. But if you're really serious about selling and you are up against the time crunch, you probably want to ask for like some type of non-refundable earnest money up front.
Right.
Especially
if you're giving her a good deal.
Yeah.
So you mentioned section 19. Oh, I'm sorry, say it again.
No, I was just going to say those are just a couple things that come to mind.
Right. That's a great question. Right. And then time frame, in other words, so the wholesaler needs a little bit of time to sell it, but so a seller needs to be aware of that, and that what kind of time frame are you looking at?
Right.
When would I have my money?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, plan on your money within probably 2 to 3 weeks on average. And what we do a lot of the time for our sellers, this is really cool, Rob, what we'll do is we'll close on the property and then let them stay in the property for anywhere from 1 week to 30 days afterwards for free.
Got it.
That's part of as wholesalers, we pride ourselves in because we're getting such good deals on these properties, we pride ourselves in providing the utmost convenience possible to the seller.
That's your value.
Right. And so that's one thing that we're willing to do, buy it as is. They can leave all their stuff behind, or the stuff that they don't want to take. We're buying it as is. We're covering both sides of closing costs. So, that could be another thing that a seller should be aware of, is just getting creative and taking advantage of that if that's something that they need.
Right. Okay. Because you have mentioned in section 19, the REPSI no assignment. So there's this training out there that if you put and/or assigns, where the name is, that now it's an assignable contract. But the REPSI's clear, right? If you read the last line, or the last section, it says, let me find it. And it even starts off with furthermore, right?
Yeah.
Comma, the inclusion of and/or assigns or similar language on the line identifying buyer on the first page of the REPSI shall constitute seller's written consent only to a permissible transfer. And the REPSI defines a permissible transfer as to a transfer to an entity that the buyer owns. So let's say I run out on the weekend, I buy a property, I put a property under contract, I talk to my my tax advisor on Monday. He says, well, you got to own it in your LLC. So I transfer, I sign the REPSI. Permittable transfer is me personally sending it to my LLC. So that's permitted in the REPSI, and that and/or assigns only allows that. Yeah. It doesn't allow you to just willy-nilly sell it to somebody.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I can't tell you how many times, because we partner with other agents and investors all the time, and somebody will bring me a contract. They're like, hey, can you wholesale this for me? I'm like, well, no, because it says and/or assigns. Like, you have to have this language in your addendum. Right. So then they have to go back to the seller and add that. So yeah, it's always better to just do it the right way from the get-go. But there are a lot of people that still think that the and/or assigns covers it, but it doesn't.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those, they attended a webinar somewhere,
Yeah.
And your phone's ringing the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Having many of those calls in my career.
I'm sure.
And then they ring off the hook. You're like, oh my God. You start looking who was in town, selling their hook. Because I always say, look, there's a difference between a wholesaler and a bird dog, right? So, and this is where I really want sellers to be aware of. A bird dog is somebody that just doesn't have any money, or I shouldn't rephrase it, usually doesn't have the ability to actually buy the property. They're just going to tie it up with a contract and sell their contract. And so while legal, my argument with the division is, an individual should be able to enter into a contract and sell the contract. That's just contract law. But those that are doing it as for their only job is to find a property so that they can sell it to somebody, to me, that's bird dogging, and they're not really a wholesaler because they're not capable of closing on the deal. They're not capable of buying the property. So they kind of irk me, those guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you bring up another good question that a seller could potentially ask is for a proof of funds.
Right.
That's one thing that I love, working with this company is we have the ability to buy these properties with cash, and we do. We double close on multiple properties every month.
Right.
And having that ability is an absolute game changer because, if we ever get in, there's been times where our buyer has backed out last second, but in order to take care of the seller, we come in and we still close the day we promised we would
right.
close, just to take care of them, and then we can figure out the back end later and resell it or keep it as a rental or whatever. So proof of funds is also a really important thing.
So that's a great question. Is the contract assignable? And if they're making a cash offer, let me see proof of funds.
Yep, exactly.
So, and because the other thing that always irked me was, even agents do, they make a cash offer, but it's really hard money.
Right.
And I don't care, if I'm the listing agent, I don't care that you're getting hard money. Just tell me.
Exactly. You want to be aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing, I'm okay with hard money. I don't have an issue. But if it is hard money, I know somebody else has to approve the deal.
Exactly. You just want to there's some further questions you want to ask beyond that,
right.
Making sure that they're qualified and the hard money lender's ready to go.
Right. Now, there are some buyers out there that have a hard money relationship where, the hard money people are just like kind of hands off because they've done enough transactions with that particular investor where they know the investor knows their numbers and they're not worried about getting burned. They just, they kind of do the deal.
Yeah.
But there aren't that too many of those.
Right.
So, and I know Jason, if I'm not mistaken, I listened to the division audio, the division hearings and things like that, or meetings, whatever they're called. And if I recall correctly, Jason was testifying to the division that said, look, we're here to do this right. Let me explain how we do things. And then, let's make sure that everybody's in agreement that this is legitimate.
Yep. Yeah, that is true. Because there was a time period, this was a few years ago, but there was a time period where the division did start to crack down on assignable contracts. And during that period, we had to double close on everything. But after the hearing process, they ended up, they were totally on board with assignable contracts that, with some, as long as the disclosures were in place. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because there was so much shenanigans with these bird dogs. I think you should have to be, I don't think you should have to have a license to be a wholesaler because you're buying and selling for yourself. But I think my opinion is you should at least be registered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're legit, you got no problem.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. There's nothing to be afraid of with a little bit of regulation if you're doing it the right way. And I think in other states like Arizona and other states, like we're starting to see some more and more regulation. We'll probably continue to see that as time goes on.
I mean, I'm a big believer in we can't take away someone's ability to go out and buy a property and sell it. I mean, that's like if it's your property, you don't need a license. But to me, bird doggers, because I mean, say you're a listing agent, you go out and you sign a contract with the seller to go find a buyer. And when you do, they close and you get paid a certain amount of money. Well, that's all bird doggers doing. They're signing a contract with the seller, going out and finding a buyer and taking a piece, I mean, they're essentially doing the functions of a real estate agent.
Yeah.
But see, if you actually are able to close, then you're, in my eyes, you're legit.
Yeah.
But so there's a real fine line over regulating, saying you can't do that. That's like, I agree that the government should, has to be careful not stepping over the line. And the Utah government won't, as far as I can tell. But I don't know where the balance is.
Right. And I think if you are a bird dogger, just make sure you're partnering up with someone who knows what they're doing. Like I teach tons of people how to wholesale, and I have a lot of bird doggers out there looking for me. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to let them get a property under contract for more than what they should and waste their time and the seller's time.
Right,
So
because it
yeah, if
makes
you are
everybody look
bird
bad.
dogging, just get in touch with
Yeah, you got
somebody
to
who
train
knows
them.
what they're doing and partner up with them.
Right, right. Yeah, so as long as they're trained properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm good with that. It's these guys that are, attend some late night webinar, and then they're running around, they're hurting people.
Yeah. No, they
Tying
really
people
are.
up 2-3 weeks, have no ability to close. They don't know what they're doing. They just lost 3 weeks of the seller's time, which could damage the seller.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
See, that's the part that irks me,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a real delicate balance of how you deal with that. An individual's right to do business and protect the public too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think you know the the realtor community, I think there's a real opportunity to market that. If you're trying to sell fast, looking for, talk to a real estate agent first. Get free advice.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That yeah, for some reason or another, I mean, I've been doing this for 3.5 years now in the wholesale space, and for some reason or another, there are a lot of agents that have a bad taste in their mouth from wholesalers, and they just refuse to work with us.
Right.
And I don't blame them. Like there are
No, right.
there's a reason why they have that opinion.
And not all dogs bite though.
Right, but there is a place for wholesaling in every agent's
Right.
business, I think, and it's just making sure we're going about it the right way and being educated on that. And so I'm really passionate about it because over the years, like we have worked with some agents that don't like wholesalers and some that do, and some change their minds and some don't. But I love just helping people and getting out there and just kind of help it, letting them know that there's good people in the space.
Right.
So
Well, and that's my objective.
I love it. Yeah, that's why, that's why I appreciate you letting me, be on here. So
Well, this is a win-win. It gives me great content, gives you exposure. I mean, it's a total win. I mean, I'm giving, my goal is to educate the agent population, and the consumer population. I mean, I'm gonna post this one on both my sites. Some podcasts are strictly agent podcasts, but
right.
I think there's enough consumer information in here that they should know.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well.
Yeah. Cool stuff, man. So what am I not asking?
I think we pretty much covered it. Yeah, I mean, I guess the main two things is buying our deals, helping people wholesale. We touched on being licensed versus not licensed. I'll kind of share my
Right.
opinion on that for a second. So
Right.
yeah, I'm obviously of the opinion that you should 100%. If you're going to be in the real estate world, why not be licensed? Because you
Right.
can help, you can capture that low-hanging fruit, you can get educated. And then also when you're buying and selling your own properties, like you're just saving that
Well, it's a network of
reinvestment.
18,000 agents that can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it really is a no-brainer. So I'm pretty opinionated as far as like getting a license. But I mean, if you want to be an investor and not licensed and just outsource that to an agent who's really good at what they do, like I totally understand that as well.
Right.
So there's really no right or wrong. But if you're going to be in the space full time, then I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. Like I said, that one question that came up in a Facebook group, what is someone said, it's not, it's a disadvantage to have a license. And again, the only disadvantage, it's only a disadvantage if you don't plan to play by the rules.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
And so even though you don't have a license, the Division of Real Estate in the state of Utah has set it up to where, because here was the analogy they gave. They said, guys driving down the street, and he ran somebody over and killed them. There was witnesses, and then they pulled the guy over down the street, and then but he didn't have a driver's license, so they had to let him go. So that was the division's analogy to say people that are behaving in the real estate space and buying and selling with consumers, just because they don't have a license, they couldn't do anything. So they changed, the rules got changed to where if you're functioning inside the real estate space with consumers, the division can come after you.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So, yeah, you may, and if you're an investor, so because as a licensee, you have, what do they call it? Culpable negligence. In other words, you can't say, not knowing is not an excuse because you're a licensee. Your license says therefore you do know. And so you can't use not knowing as an excuse. Now, a non-licensee could, they're not required to know. But I think if you were functioning as an investor, I think a judge in a court of law would lean a little heavier on you and saying, as an investor, you're a little more sophisticated. They might not treat you full on as a licensee, but they're not going to treat you as a consumer that shouldn't know.
Yeah.
I think, especially if you're a little old lady, you got a little old lady. I mean, because some of these guys, I get emails and stuff, and I just want to hang these guys.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there's nothing wrong with a little bit of regulation if you're playing by the rules. And it's funny you mentioned that because before I got licensed or as I was getting licensed, I heard the same things like, oh, like there's just pros and cons. There's but yeah, I mean, there's no disadvantages that I can think of being an
investor. As long as you're playing by the rules.
Yeah, as long as you're playing by the rules, there's no disadvantages. So if you're not getting a license because of that, then I think you should get over that and definitely get licensed. But going back to what I was saying earlier, if you just don't want to be licensed and you'd rather
hire a licensee,
outsource that to someone who's great at what they do, that's totally fine. There's nothing
because it's a whole job. And if you're an investor and you have a lot of cash, you might be involved in like 3 or 4 other businesses where you don't have time to be the agent.
Exactly.
Just hire one. And I'm all for that idea.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, no, I get that. So, well, that's perfect. So, well, like I said, I don't think we missed anything. You didn't think we did.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody was looking to get into this can open up a whole rabbit hole, but just like somebody, I don't know if you wanted to talk about if somebody is looking to get into wholesaling, like how to get your first or next deal.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
That's totally fine. But
yeah.
So I mean, and again, there's a lot that goes to it, but I think the 3 essential components to wholesaling are number 1, lead generation, number 2, acquisitions, and number 3, dispositions or selling property. And so first, come up with like a system or a process around lead flow. You've got to have leads coming in, otherwise you'll never get a deal. And there's a whole plethora of marketing channels. There's driving for dollars, where you drive around, look for fixer-uppers, and you knock on their door, send them a mailer. There's direct mail, there's cold calling, there's texting, there's online ads, SEO, PPC. There's a wide range. Some cost a lot of money. And some cost a lot of time. So if you don't want to put a lot of money into it, like you got to be willing to trade your time.
You got to roll up your sleeves and go door knocking.
Yep, go door knocking, go cold calling.
Well, let me ask you this though. So out of the lead generation, how many of those leads would you say are like kind of in a position to, or even willing to sell at a price that because you have to get it at a certain number. And if you don't get your number, you can't do it.
Right.
And so what would you say that the number of leads that come in versus the ones that you can actually close on? What would you say that ratio is?
As far as like the total number of leads that come in versus those that we close,
Yeah, what would you say that number is? If you
probably like, I mean, it's less than 5%.
so if you talk to 100 people, you might do 3.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, it's probably even worse. It's probably even more than that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, to give you an idea, like we're sending, like one of our lead channels is texting, and we're sending thousands of texts a day.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you're talking motivated sellers, out of the motivated sellers that we meet with, that's a much higher percentage, right? But like of the total lead volume that that we're marketing to through direct mail, online ads, texting, all that good stuff, that, I mean, it's a really low percentage. I mean, it's just a numbers game. Like you got to reach a lot of people.
Like any other business.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the reason why I bring that up, I kind of knew the number would be low, but I just wanted people to realize that if they're thinking about going down that space, that, it's a lot of work. Now it can be, lucrative, but, as a solo, it's a challenge as a solo.
Definitely is, yeah.
And you need to be able to go for a few months without getting a deal, So you learn.
Yeah, I think for people, there's a guy named Brent Daniels down in Arizona that's big on wholesaling, and he says, or I could be wrong, it might have been someone else, but I think if someone's not willing to give it at least 6 months, then don't even get into the space.
Then don't even start.
Yeah, don't even
just
start.
wasting all your money.
To commit to it for 6 months, you will be successful. I promise you.
Right.
But if you're not, like, let's just not even go there. I can't tell you how many times people get into it. They go, a month of cold calling here and there, and then they quit. It's just not even worth it.
Right.
So, and then, so there's lead flow, and then there's acquisitions. And then there's dispositions.
Yeah, you need to be able to buy.
Master those 3 things, like you'll be successful.
Right. So if you're buying with your own money or hard money, then you need to close. If you're assigning the contract, then you really need to know how to price them. Because that's, to me, even as a real estate agent, pricing is everything. Right. Yeah. I mean, even if you're selling at retail, you still got to be correct price or it won't sell. So the same thing applies to wholesale. If you're trying to wholesale it, you still got to you got to buy it at a price that allows you to wholesale it at the right price.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to sell to a retail buyer, and then which defeats the whole purpose of a seller going with a cash offer to close quickly.
Yeah, no, you nailed it on the head. So of those 3 components, lead flow, acquisitions, and dispositions, I've identified 3 skills or habits that I feel like are essential for each component. And so for lead generation, I'd say it's lead flow, creating a system and a process around that. For acquisitions, it's negotiating and then deal analysis. So you just touched on that, but yeah, that's the number 1 mistake that new investors make, is paying
deal analysis.
You need to know your numbers. Otherwise, you're going to waste everyone's time.
Right.
And so partner with a good real estate agent that knows their numbers, or partner with a good wholesaler that knows their numbers. That way you're getting them under contract at a realistic price. And then number 3 for dispositions, the skill or habit was like relationships. Building relationships with other investors and agents is so key in this market, especially.
Right. Sweet. Good stuff, man.
Well, yeah, it's fun, man.
So let me ask you, Jaden, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah, you could, I'll just give out my cell number if that's okay. Yeah, my cell number is 435 292 5420.
And what's the best email for you?
Jaden, my first name, so Jaden.
Okay.
At creationutah.com.
Creation?
Yep, creationutah.com.
Utah.com. Okay. So perfect. Well, this was good stuff, man. So this will go out this Friday.
Awesome.
So anyway,
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always fun chatting all things real estate. So
Oh, yeah.
it is good stuff.
Well, thanks for coming, Jaden. This is Rob Aubrey with Productive Agent Podcast. Productive Agent Podcast is powered by Aubrey Home Loans. So if you have any questions about lending or any of our other podcasts, if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, just get a hold of me. 801-999-8209 or rob@aubrey.net. And you guys have a wonderful day.